Hello, Atmore. It's the Lloyd and Friends show. And now here's your host, Lloyd Albritton.
Good morning, or afternoon, as it may be. This is the good Lloyd speaking here on the Lloyd and Friends show. And I'm here talking with my special guest for today, who just turns out to be my little brother, Phillip.
What do you mean by that word special?
Well, Phillip, you've always been special, in a certain kind of way.
Yeah, sometimes I feel more special than other times.
No, Phillip is a big supporter of the program. He helps me a lot on the program, and he also happens to be, a character.
Me?
Phillip is quite a character. In fact, I was talking with one of my cousins, lives over in Georgia here just recently, and he was telling me about Phillip coming out to visit with him, and he said, hanging out with Phillip for a day or two. He said, I've known Phillip for my whole life, and we're all in our 70s now. And I never realized that Phillip is the most interesting person I ever met.
Well, I fit into this show then.
Yeah, Phillip fits right in. And so we're going to try to bring up some of the nuances of my brother Phillip's personality. Now, first of all, let me say that there were 5 boys in our family.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There were 5 boys, and the baby was a little girl, Susan. I'm number 2. Lloyd is number 2. The oldest was Ronnie, and then Phillip was number 3. So
I'm in the middle.
He's kind of right in the middle. So you have underneath Phillip Greg, who everybody knows Greg is a politician of the family.
Yeah.
At least the successful one. And then baby brother Avis, and then the baby is Susan. So Phillip is number 3. He was kind of right in the middle. How does that feel, Phillip? How did that feel growing up, being in the middle? It's kind of like nobody. Like
I can only relate to a period when you and Ronnie were teenagers, and I was like 12 and 13. I was closer to Greg. Avis was still a kid, a baby, and me and Gregory were like preteens together. And you and Ronnie were off hunting girls and driving cars and stuff. And so
yeah,
I felt closer to the younger ones than you and Ronnie, I think, during those years.
Yeah, we didn't allow y'all to go to town with us or anything.
Right.
Y'all were too little.
Yeah.
That's the way I remember it. Ronnie and I were always very close. And when Ronnie was 16, he was able to get his license and drive the car. Ronnie was a little bit more, I was more the brash one of the family, so Ronnie would allow me to go along because he would send me on errands, to go over there and ask these girls if they'll ride with us or something like that, to do the talking. And so Ronnie allowed me, and as soon as he got with his buddies in town, well, he'd dump me at the movie show or something.
Yeah.
But he'd always allow me to go.
I didn't really feel like I had an identity as a teenager or coming up until we moved to Pensacola, and I was the oldest one at home. You and Ronnie, maybe you were still at home or you stayed behind here and lived with somebody, but I was the oldest one in the house when we moved to Pensacola.
That's right. Ronnie had, by that time, we grew up over in the Nokomis area. And it was, well, we have some disagreement about exactly when this all happened. But
Right.
Daddy worked at Brookley Field for many years, and they closed Brookley Field, and they offered him an option of transferring to another base. And so he chose ultimately to work at Herbert Field down toward Eglin in Pensacola. And so the family moved to Pensacola. Now, Ronnie, by that time, had already gone off in the Marine Corps.
Right.
So he had left home, and I think I was in my senior year of school.
Yeah.
And,
you stayed behind with somebody.
I stayed behind. I just could not bear the thought of changing schools at that point in my life. I was looking forward to playing football and all that kind of stuff. I was entrenched in my friends. So Daddy allowed me to stay, and I stayed in Atmore with some friends and hitched rides to school. But you and the other ones all went to Pensacola,
Right, right.
and so that I never thought about that. That kind of put you the oldest for a while. Didn't
I was the oldest kid in the house there for through that summer, and the next year. I guess from then on, unless you or Ronnie came back home, to visit or something.
Did you feel? Did you feel that then, like a sense of responsibility? Now I'm the oldest. Or
Yeah, I did.
Did that only occur to you later?
No, I felt it then because I when we went to Gulf Breeze, I had a paper route on my first motor scooter that I bought, and I felt some responsibility to help financially in the house, help Mom and Daddy pay bills and stuff like that. So I did. I'd give them money sometimes of my wages.
You had a newspaper route, Pensacola News.
Had a little Honda 50. That's where my first motorcycle.
I remember you going on that route. I couldn't hardly see you on the motorcycle for all the newspapers. I don't know how you got. You had the Pensacola Beach route, didn't you?
I had the entire Pensacola Beach, Santa Rosa Island. I didn't go all the way to Fort Pickens, but I went halfway to Fort Pickens and halfway to Navarre the other way, throwing them papers. And it took me from 3 o'clock in the morning till sometimes 8 or 9 o'clock.
And then you had to throw them again in the afternoon.
Then I had to go back and do it in the afternoon. Yep.
And along that time, I might mention Phillip made straight A's in school. Always did good. That must have had some impact upon you emotionally, changing schools and moving to Pensacola.
Yeah, that first year at the high school, the 10th grade, I had my paper route. I actually had to repeat that year because I skipped so many days.
How many days? You skipped like most of the year.
80. I skipped 89 days that year. That's one less than half the year.
So you did the paper route down there. You were the oldest one. What about Greg? Did he help you with some of that?
Greg got involved with it. He was a little young at that time to take a job, but he did later. He helped out. Yeah. When we went to doing paper routes with Mama in the car, and Gregory helped out a lot with that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember our mother did the paper route as well. She had some kind of little English Ford.
Right.
And that little car would be just packed with papers and people. You and Gregory and Mom.
Yeah. Yeah, Mama had that paper route on 98, Santa Rosa Shores. That I had to go across the bridge to the island for mine. But Mama and Gregory they just went straight on 98 and did all those communities down on Santa Rosa Shores, Soundside.
Yeah. Now, Phillip, I know that Ronnie and I, having grown up living over in Nokomis and going to Walnut Hill School, that part of our lives were kind of embedded in us as we'll sort of like being in the Marine Corps. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Once you grow up in Nokomis, you just can't put it down. It's just a brotherhood of having lived in Nokomis.
Yeah.
Very unusual way of life. Now, you left Nokomis so fairly early and moved to Pensacola. What do you identify mostly with Pensacola or with Nokomis, with up this way?
About half and half, really. My formative years were in Nokomis, out in the country. Running through them woods, just like you and Ronnie did, camping in the woods and stuff. And when I didn't go to Pensacola till I was 15.
You were 15 already, okay.
So I never did really get along that well at Pensacola, the bigger high school. I had to repeat the 10th grade. I had a bunch of lousy friends. And then the second year I was there, I developed better friendships. And I like the last couple of years better than the first two.
Well, going back to Nokomis, Phillip, Phillip, I might mention, is our family artiste. He's an artist, and from a very young age, Phillip always seemed to want to draw on the wall, or particularly remember the Bible salesman coming.
Any white piece of paper I could find.
Any white piece of paper he could find, he'd draw something on it. I remember the Bible salesman came by one time and sold Mama a big one of those big heavy family Bibles.
Right.
I think it was $50 for that Bible, which was a lot of money then. And it wasn't but a day or two. Philip found those clear pages in that Bible, and he drew comic books were big then. I think you drew a big picture of Wyatt Earp with his striped breeches and so forth.
Yeah, so I think that's when Mama bought me that blackboard.
I bought you a blackboard. But Philip was always kind of had the artist instinct in him. And later, Philip, you went off to college. After you went in service first before you went to college.
I went on a mission.
Went on a
with
mission,
the church.
a church mission.
I got back from that and got married, and it wasn't long before I joined the Air Force. Right?
Okay. Let's talk about the church mission for just a little bit. Now, Philip kind of Mrs. Patty Stone down at Walnut Hill. She taught most of us Albritton boys, and she kind of said comically one time that Philip was the only one of you Albritton boys that was actually smart. The rest of you are just pretty good at faking it. And I'm not so sure that she wasn't right about that. But Philip was always considered the smart one. And so Philip went off on a church mission. We grew up as Latter-day Saints, Mormons. And in the Mormon church, of course, all the young men are encouraged to go on 2-year missions somewhere in the world. And so Philip made that decision to go, and he was called to serve in Austria.
Yeah. Well, see, I never dreamed I would go. I had no aspirations of doing a foreign mission. I thought they would send me to Arkansas or somewhere, And so I had previously taken German in high school at Woodham High School. Had 2 years of German, and I guess that pushed me into the category of having some lingual experience.
Maybe that's why they assigned you there.
That's part of the reason, I imagine. So I was called to Austria, which is German-speaking mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did that help you? Did your high school German classes help you, or did you find it not much help?
It wasn't really much help. When we got into the language training portion of the mission, very early out at Brigham Young University, I had to go through this intensive course of learning grammar, German grammar, and that's where they really give you the language training, is in that course at Brigham Young.
That's only like a month or so, isn't it? It's not very long.
2 or 3 months. Yeah.
2 or 3 months you had to go for the language training.
It's very intense. It's like total immersion. We had German for a teacher, and we weren't allowed to speak English in the dorm or at school, anywhere.
I always wondered how they do that because, we have missionaries all over the world, and they have to learn to speak the language.
Yeah, I think they do it a little differently now, but it's basically the same. It's like throwing you in the deep end of the pool, total immersion.
Total immersion.
You don't go out there and then you translate everything from English to learn it. You just either get it or you don't, and eventually you'll get it.
Do you learn to think in German?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, a good illustration of that was while I was at the language training mission at BYU, we were allowed to go, some holiday, we went to a BYU basketball game. And we were sitting in the stands, a group of missionaries from the language training part, and I was hearing the announcer was speaking everything in German. I was hearing everything in German that the announcer was speaking. And so I looked over at the guy next to me and I said, "Boy, are they talking that way just for us? Can you imagine them doing that just for us because we're here as German language trainees?" Mm-hmm. And he looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "They're speaking in German." He started laughing. He says, "No, they're not. They're speaking in English."
Really?
And my brain was so used to being in the German training that I was translating it automatically into German. Is the weirdest feeling. But after he told me,
you were hearing English, but you were thinking it was German.
It sounded German, like they was speaking German.
Well, that's an interesting observation.
And it immediately went away once he told me. Once he cleared it up and said they're speaking English.
Once you knew that.
My brain switched or something, and I started hearing it in English then.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, how long, once you were out in the field, did you feel 100% comfortable?
Never. You never feel 100% because the German, once I had been there about, a year and a half or 2 years, I felt like I was still at the level of maybe a 4 or 5 year old kid, speaking wise.
Really?
You know how even kids growing up in English in America, when they get up to certain levels, they have better speaking, better grammar, better vocabulary. And so I only felt like I was at a maybe 4 or 5 year old kid in German by the time I had learned it for 2 years. You know?
That's because you were over there.
Right.
If you were taking classes in the United States, you might think you were pretty good until you actually went to the country.
Right.
Then you would realize.
Yeah. You don't know how lacking you are until you go where they are.
Where they are, yeah. But you felt pretty competent. I mean, the mission was 2 years, correct?
Right.
By the end of 2 years speaking it, you were pretty much immersed in it over there.
Yeah, I was on. If I had lived there another 3 to 4 years, I would have been
Fluent.
I would have been completely fluent, and I'd been coming back with an accent, which I did actually have a little accent when I came back.
Huh.
You know.
Well, that's interesting. Now, what about forgetfulness? When you learn a foreign language like that as a second language, how much have you forgotten? Or is it like riding a bicycle, you never forget it?
You never really forget the basic structure of the language, but what you forget is the vocabulary. You know, you forget the word for table is tish, the word for this, but I can't remember the words for everything. Just have forgotten all that.
The particular words.
Right.
But you studied in your language training the what do you call it, format or the structure of the German language.
Sentence structure, just speaking, but just the fluency of speaking. You never really, when you learn it at the level we did, you never really forget it. I mean, a couple of years ago, I met some Germans on tour when I was out walking in a park, and I heard them speaking German, and I was able to talk to them for just a little bit. You know, of course, they started talking real fast because they thought I was fluent. And I said,
to start with.
Oh yeah, slow down a little bit, you know. But
well, Philip, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what anybody who's listening to this conversation probably has in their mind. Can you still make a sentence in German?
Verzeichlich. Ich heiße Phil. Ich bin hier, denn mein Bruder hat mir befragen mir hier zu kommen.
Okay, sounds pretty good to me.
Well, it's like I said, it's like a little kid talking. I'm sure I said everything wrong,
but you'd fool an American, wouldn't you?
I could fool an American, yeah. I could be on a video. I could be on a film, like on the movies where you got Tom Cruise speaking German, you know.
Yeah, one of those overdubs.
Yeah.
But your lips wouldn't be forming the right word.
Yeah.
Well, so how was Austria? What was unique? It was what, socialist? Is it a socialist country or?
No,
politically, how was
it was a democratic country, but it was they had a communist party that ran every year, so they allowed the communist guy to run, but he never won. So it was pretty much based on the structure of a democratic government like England or U.S. or what, you know. Yeah, it wasn't. It was a republic, I guess. You know.
Well, you know, I've never lived in a foreign country, but I have lived in several places in the U.S., and to me, every place I've ever lived, whether it was in California or Colorado or in New York, after a period of time, the people all seem like they're kind of the same. They just have a little different accent. How about like in Austria? Were the people significantly different in their character and personality, or about the same as
the farther south you go in Europe, the closer you are to Roman Italian Catholicism. But also in the Germanic, from North Germany to Austria, it's like the difference in being in Minnesota and South Alabama. The difference in accents, and they call it in Germany, in Austria, they call it Gemütlichkeit. Gemütlichkeit is laid back, being laid back and relaxed. and it's manifested in their language, their accent, and their lifestyle. They're just very relaxed and calm. You go to North Germany, and they're very structured, rigid. The language is very precise, and it's a lot of difference.
The speed of speaking the language would be a little different.
Perhaps speed. I never did go to North except flying through and at the airport, but I never did spend a whole lot of time with the Northern German people. I don't know if the speed played a part of it or not, but.
Well, I heard a little joke one time. I guess it was a joke. The North Germans and the South Germans, the Northern Germans, they say Dankeschön. The Southern Germans, they say Doggeschang.
Yeah. No, I don't know about that.
Okay.
But a good example
Maybe
would
just
be,
something I heard.
in German, the word for let's go to the house is gehen wir nach Hause. And so in North Germany, they would say, lass uns nach Hause gehen. But in southern Austria and Switzerland, they would say, geh mal Husi.
Sounds like quite a bit. I don't know what you said, but it sounds.
Let's go home.
Let's go home.
Geh mal
totally
Husi. But in northern Germany, it would be lassen uns nach Hause gehen.
Wow.
Or gehen wir nach Hause.
Is it Austrians speak the German language, or
Yeah.
a variation of it? Is there an Austrian language?
It's a dialect.
Or Austrian dialect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've heard you speak from time to time that you'd love to go back and visit Austria. You haven't been back since you were served there, have you?
That's something I really regret because I'm getting to the age now I won't be able to climb the mountains and stuff like I did before. But it's beautiful. I'd love to go back.
Yeah.
The Austrian Alps.
Now, going back to the people, were the people hospitable?
Oh yeah, very friendly.
You found them?
Yeah, it's like Southern hospitality here.
Yeah. What about the food? Was the food edible?
No, the food was great. Yeah.
They eat those sauerkraut and hot dogs pretty much, or is that just
Not hot dogs.
what do they call that?
Wiener Schnitzel.
Yeah.
Wiener Schnitzel is not the same as what we think it is here. Wiener Schnitzel is pork, cordon bleu, chicken. I mean, they eat the same basic meats we do. They just prepare it differently.
Oh, I see.
They use a lot of vinegar. A potato salad is cooked potato with onion and vinegar in a bowl.
Okay. And so you served your 2 years mission in Austria, and then you came back home. Now you went in the service. Did you get married before you went in the service? Or?
Yes. Yeah, I got married just like 2 years before I went in the Air Force.
Oh, you did? Okay. Mm-hmm. So you just held another job in Pensacola area?
Yeah, I worked over in Pace at Air Products in Pace for.
Okay, Air Products. Yeah, I'll have to insert this funny story about Philip that's told.
Talking about
me.
The fishy smell.
Yeah, I told him about my brother Ronnie, who was married then. He was the older brother. So Philip stayed with Ronnie and his wife Linda for a period of time when he was working at that.
Before I got married. Yeah.
Before he got married, yeah, stayed with them, and he was working at the. What kind of plant was that?
It was the fertilizer plant.
Fertilizer plant. And Ronnie kept noticing this smell, and you know the story better than I do. What, it was in your clothes? You didn't realize it?
Yeah, the fertilizer plant has all these chemicals, and I'm out there doing reports, and I was an admin type job, and walking around through the factory, it just permeates everything, So it was in my clothes, and I didn't really realize it because I'm out there smelling it all day long. So I'd come home and take a shower and throw my clothes in the hamper, but that smell was so bad, pungent, that Ronnie and Linda were just like, "Oh, what is that? Have I been like rolling around in a fish pot or something?" Because it smelled fishy. It smelled like fish, dead fish.
That's funny. So you got married then, and shortly thereafter, you went in the service?
Went into the service in March of '74. Yep.
March of '74. Okay, and in that marriage, you have 4 children. You have 4.
Yeah, we have 4 children.
4 children. They're all up older than you and I now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're older than us now. Smarter too, I think.
Okay. And so you served. That was Air Force.
Air Force.
Okay.
I got out early actually to go to college. I didn't stay in my full 6 years. I stayed in.
Oh, you signed up initially for 6 years, not 4.
I signed up for 6, and then with Palace, a program called Palace Chase, I got out after 3, but I had to serve 6 more years in the Air Force Reserve.
And you did that?
Which I did, yeah.
Okay. And so you went to school from there while you were married and raising your family.
Right.
And where'd you go to school?
Went to PJC first, junior college for the first 2 years, and then transferred to University of Florida in Gainesville.
Okay.
And I went through the whole art program. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Art.
Okay. Now, when you started PJC, did you plan to go into the art field then, or did you change your mind, like a lot of people do, you know?
No, I always knew I got out of the Air Force to go to art school. That was my goal to go.
Okay.
So I didn't know what direction in art I would take, but I knew I wanted to take some form of art training.
Okay.
And so I just, I just forged ahead. That's what I did.
Well, how'd you do? How was your college experience?
I had like 3.8 grade point average all through junior and senior college. At PJC, I had 4.0.
Okay.
At Florida, made a couple of C's, and so it dropped me down to 3.8.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. When you really enjoy school, you make good grades.
Yeah. Well, I guess that goes with almost everything. If you enjoy it,
Right,
you do better.
You're good at it. Mm-hmm.
Now, along about this time, I'll tell this story about Philip because he didn't like to brag on himself. I think Philip had just graduated from college, or maybe you're in your senior year or something. Some of his projects he did was doing some pencil drawings.
Oh, that was 1980. I graduated in December of 80, and the last 2 semesters there, I took advanced drawing courses.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it turned out you were pretty good with the pencil doing drawings. At least I thought so when I saw some of them.
Well, I had a friend.
I thought they were just exquisite. I'd never seen anything.
I had a personal friend who wasn't a college guy. But he saw my work in Gainesville, and he said he was kind of critical. He said, I wouldn't really call you an artist, but you're a fantastic draftsman. Because it was so photorealistic. My work was very photorealistic.
Oh, I see.
Very tight,
Uh-huh.
So he thought I was a better draftsman than an artist,
I think what I was mostly impressed with, Philip, when I first saw your drawings was the detail.
Yeah.
Fabrics, denims, light, shadows and light.
Plaids, stripes.
Plaids, that kind of stuff was just so realistic. It almost looked like it was in color, only it was black and white graphite. And the faces were so much detail that the faces looked exactly like the guy looks, and so at that time I saw some of those, and I persuaded Philip. I was in the life insurance business then, I think.
Yeah.
And I was a salesman, and I thought I was a pretty good one at the time. One of those guys that can sell anything. At least I thought so. And I told Philip, look, I can sell these. And Philip said, nah. I said, well, how much would something like this be worth? And Philip said, I don't know, $15, $20 probably. I said, no, we can do better than that. So we went out. I went out and sold a couple of them to a couple of individuals, but we just couldn't get enough orders doing that. So we developed a little program. I don't know, Philip, if you remember this exactly like I do, but we decided to do some art shows, and we called the paintings Philip's Exclusives. And
Oh yeah, I remember that.
we called it the Philip's Exclusive. And what Philip would do, I would go gather the information for him. And
I didn't have a last name. We kept me a mystery, just Philip, like Madonna or Cher.
Yeah,
it was like,
it was just Philip. Philip would sign it. Philip would always, being formal, he'd sign his art, Philip L. Albritton. I said, no, we got to like Cher.
You bring somebody to the gallery, and I'd be back in the back room with sunglasses on. That's Philip back there. You can't talk to him.
Well, I'll tell it in a second. That exactly thing happened. So we went around Bruton, Atmore, Andalusia, several towns in Pensacola, and I would go into the town go to the historical society, and I would say, I'm representing this. I didn't want to say Phillip Albritton because I didn't want to tell him he was my brother. So I would say I represent the very famous artist Phillip, who I'm sure you've probably heard of. As I nodded my head, and they would say, "Oh yeah, I think I do know. I've heard of Phillip." Yeah, I said, "Well, Phillip, is planning on doing this really big shoe, this really big show down in our area, and it's a historical project. So what we need to do is to look at the history of your town, look at some of the historical characters." And, Phillip, with his composition, if the guys owned the first sawmill in town or whatever, we would gather these old pictures. And the more amateur the pictures were, the more character the drawings would have. So we'd select these pictures of Grandpa, in his overalls or whatever, and with his favorite old mule and sawmill in the background, or the old barn that everybody remembers. And Phillip would compose these into these big. You remember what the dimensions were of these?
They were like 30 by 40 inches.
30 by 40 inches. It was a big drawing, and they became quite popular.
I did Wilson Johnson. I did Philip May and Bruton.
Yeah.
The Macmillans.
Tom Macmillan. We did five drawings, which are hanging in the Lee House to this day. You did
Blunt. I did Winton Blunt up in Montgomery.
Yeah. And somebody you did in Tuscaloosa, did you do Bear Bryant or somebody like that?
I can't remember all of them I did.
But we did quite a number. Phillip did them. And so finally the project ended. I think Phillip just got tired of doing them.
I couldn't do them as fast as you could sell them. That's the problem.
People wanted them. But drawing was, I think, a fundamental thing for you. I mean, it wasn't where Phillip wanted to end his art career.
Yeah, it became once
you got bored. You kind of got bored doing those.
I did, and the drawings themselves became it became a chore, more of a chore than fun. Mm-hmm. But I do that portrait of Philip May in Bruton, the guy that had the candy store. He was an ex-senator. He had been a senator in Alabama.
Right.
That picture, I went over and talked to him in his backyard and took pictures of him. And the drawing he was out on a plaid, just out in the sun, sitting in the chair in the sun. I enjoyed doing that one because I felt closer to the person, I think, and the imagery was much more challenging. Mm-hmm. Things like that I really enjoyed doing, but some of them, they were not enjoyable at all. They were just work, and it got to be more work than fun. Eventually.
Yeah. So that project kind of went the way of the buffalo. But Phillip did quite a few of those, and you'll see them. In fact, some of you old timers who remember Mr. Johnny Jones at the First National Bank, Phillip did one of him. I think that's hanging in the boardroom now. Just a fantastic pencil drawing. And so that part of Phillip's career kind of led us. In fact, we opened a little art shop here in Atmore for a little time. We, renovated one of the buildings down there. And
right across the street from the post office, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. And we opened a framing shop and an art studio. And I remember Mr. Robin Swift, the senior Robin Swift. All right, he's passed now. I think he was a state senator at one point. Anyway, we wanted to do one of him, and he kept coming down to the studio, but he wanted to meet Phillip. And he would come in and say, well, I want to meet Phillip. I said, well, Phillip is not here right now. And so he came down 3 or 4 times. He would pop by the studio. And I remember Mr. Swift came in one day, and he says, we had another guy doing the framing. He was kind of a weird-looking guy from New Jersey who had a big beard, a friend of mine. And he looked like an artist, although he was doing the framing. And Mr. Swift I said, well, Phillip is not here right now. And he looked back at this guy back in the shop there with that big beard, and he said, "Is that Phillip?" And I said, "No, that's not Phillip. He's the guy doing the framing."
They thought you were lying.
Yeah, and he looked at me again. And he said, "There is no Phillip, is there?" And we never could connect Mr. Swift with Phillip himself. He wanted to make sure Phillip was actually doing them. so I don't think we ever did one for him. But anyway, we did some radio programs, and we have Phillip on the radio, and we promoted him quite heavily. In fact, that was one of the problems that you and I had at the time. Phillip was beginning to feel like that I was promoting him like a rock star. He said, "You're kind of, what's the word, demeaning my talent as an artist by promoting me in this way." So anyway, that period ended, and through the years, Phillip has had his hand in art.
I continued doing those drawings when I moved to Atlanta. Not long after that, I went to Atlanta in '84, '86, and I continued doing those drawings for people up there. I've got drawings I did of animals and people, not just around Atmore, but all over the Southeast from the time in Atlanta.
But you have moved from pencil drawings to where you more enjoy doing the oil paintings now, don't you?
That came later. Yeah, I started doing oil painting.
But I remember we had a friend named John Kemp who painted with oils.
Yeah.
And Phillip and John became, fellow artists and admirers of each other. John just really loved Phillip, loved what he was doing, and Phillip was equally impressed with John's oil. But I remember, Phillip, you seemed to be not quite as confident of your ability with oil at that time. But now I see some of the stuff you're doing now, and I can't imagine it could be any better than what you're doing.
Well, it was like the drawing. When I was in high school, my goal was to draw faces, and I couldn't do it, and so I did it and did it and did it until I got good at it. The same when I approached oil painting, I had the same thing happen. I couldn't get a person's face to look right until I worked with it. I just kept working and working with it and figured out a process and a system, and so I got fairly good with it. And then I evolved to just doing. Right now, I'm just experimenting with shapes and colors and
birds, different animals.
I do some realistic stuff still, but mostly I've gone to more unrealistic, abstract
stuff.
Not totally abstract because it's based on representational stuff, But
so even an idiot like me could kind of get an idea of what it was.
Of course, you can tell what it is.
It's not.
But
totally
if you get up close to it, it's like it breaks apart. It just becomes shapes and colors.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Being a teacher, I taught school. My career ended by 13 years of teaching art in elementary school, and I really got into teaching those kids basic principles of art. And so by doing that, I had to reapproach my own training. I had to reprogram myself to examine the principles I'm using when I'm painting. And so I kind of got into using certain principles and elements of art. And so shapes, colors, values, those kind of things. And then the imagery comes out by using those principles and applying my history of art, what I feel I like to paint and draw. You mesh that together and something comes out, which is what I get now, a result. So it's just part of it is because my eyesight is not as good as it used to be. I can't do the fine detail stuff, and part of it is I'm just not as patient. I'm not as patient with doing. I go out to work on a drawing. I'm working on a portrait right now, drawing for someone, and it's just the most boring thing in the world. I work about 20 minutes a day on it because I just don't like to
patience.
do it. Yeah. But it's turning out good. I was doing some on it yesterday, and it started developing into something, so I got more focused and more interested in doing it once I could see it developing and turning into something.
Are you doing any shows these days, like displays or anything?
No, not really. I haven't really approached anybody. Mm-hmm. I was a gallery in Little Five Points in Atlanta who wanted to show my painting that I did years ago of the Little 5 Points street scene, a cityscape, and kind of got that idea in my head to show some things in Atlanta. But other than that, I'm just piddling around, working in my own studio over here on 4th Avenue.
Mm-hmm. I remember back, Phillip, when I was proposing to sell some of your art, and of course I didn't know anything about art. The way I drew a face was like a moon pie, with the upside down
Right.
smile. So I told Phillip, teach me a little bit about art, so when I go out and talk to people, I can act like I know what I'm talking about. And I remember Phillip telling me that all drawing is 3 or 4 basic shapes. It's a circle, a rectangle, and a triangle or something. It's all boils down to those basic shapes.
Yeah.
Am I quoting you correctly?
Maybe. I don't remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always, I can still look at it. I love art. I think because I'm in awe of things I don't understand, and it totally escapes me of how you can do what you do, or how any artist is able to translate to paper.
We'll see.
What he's seeing. I absolutely can't.
Artists
do
are no different than everybody else. Every artist is different. Every artist has their own way of working based on their innate abilities and sensibilities and skills and history and training. And every artist works different. Every artist has different styles and different way of working. The famous artist, the little short guy, what was his name? Who did the drawings of the circus? I can't remember his name now. French artist back in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
But he had the ability to draw from memory. He could go to the circus and enjoy the circus. Then he went home and he could paint and draw exactly from memory the detailed horses.
Now that's interesting that you bring that up, because I remember you and I having this conversation at some time in the past, and I said, Phillip, can you draw me something? And you said, well, you got a picture of it.
Yeah, I have to draw from looking. I have to draw from reference.
So you have to look at something. If it was a face, you'd either have to look at a picture or at the person.
Correct.
Like a still drawing or something.
I can't draw from memory.
From memory.
Yeah.
And so that's an unusual skill that artists have. That's not all. Would you say very few have?
Very few have that level of skill. Yeah.
They can draw from memory.
Mm-hmm.
There was an artist? Wasn't there a blind artist one time that drew from his mind?
Monet went blind.
Went blind.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was able to see enough to do. He still drew from, like he looked at the pond to draw those big, huge pond paintings, the lily pad paintings, and the Japanese bridge. It's so famous. But he was looking at in his own garden. He did that from looking at it, not from memory.
Now, Phillip, you did a project for our cousin Travis Barlow. Travis we grew up with Travis, and he's done quite well in the insurance business, insuring records. It was his specialty.
I did quite a few record drawings and paintings.
So he enlisted Phillip to do some drawings for some of his clients. You did quite a few of those.
That was. I went to the tow truck shows with him, and we were trying to promote the art. The tow truck art. He was trying to help me promote my art through doing this niche tow trucks. And so I did quite a few of them and sold some. But I got there again. I got tired of being so cornered into just doing tow trucks.
One particular thing.
Yeah.
Now, the difference between drawing a bird or a barn or a landscape as opposed to portrait. Let's see if I can say this. Portraiture. Portraits.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. How you say that. People. Drawing people. Are faces. Are faces particularly difficult? I know you do a great job. That seems to be your specialty.
Everybody thinks that, but to me, face is no different than drawing a plaid shirt. It's all the same. I just look at it as colors and shapes, and I even draw upside down sometimes. I can draw upside down or sideways. It don't have to be straight. I'm just transferring what I see onto the paper, and what the final image, the final result comes out with a lot of my personality in it, but I draw basically just what I see. Yeah.
Well, is it fair to say that for most artists, some artists just, as far as faces, I mean, if an artist is an artist, well, can some artists do better on faces and others do better on trees?
They just like that particular what's the word? They like that. They like drawing landscapes more than they like drawing people, or they like drawing still lifes, but more than they like drawing landscapes. They'll zero in on a particular style, a particular thing. I always favored people and patterns and things, faces, the wrinkles in the face. But it's no different than drawing a tree. No, it's all, to me, it's all the same. Yeah, so, you'll see some artists are more motivated by making a living at it than I am. I never really cared for the money in it, but the artist who focuses on doing it for a living, they'll zero in on like beach scenes, and they have a great talent at doing beach scenes, and they'll do seashells.
They pump them out.
They pump them out. They can do a beach scene that's 30 by 40 in an hour, and they just watercolors. They'll use a medium of watercolor or tempera or acrylic or some other medium that's faster.
Yeah, I guess it's. Would it be very similar to a writer who has a successful book or two, and then he ends up writing 50 books, and they're pretty much all the same book?
Yeah, it's just.
They just changed the names and location.
Very similar thing. Yeah.
Music probably the same way. There are some artists that have a hit or two, and then the rest of their songs all sound kind of the same.
Yeah.
But you don't like to do that. You deliberately switch your medium. Just challenge yourself.
Not my medium, but my. I've gone from people to birds to, I don't know, cars, tow trucks. I just draw whatever I feel like drawing, whatever appeals to me at a particular time. I've got all these ideas in my head of things that I want to do, but I never bring them to fruition because I'm always doing something else. I say, okay, I'll do those hanging shirts later. I'll do that. But I got that in the back of my head. So I've got this idea of hanging shirts on the clothesline, plaid shirts, and plaid and different and blouses, like lingerie and shirts, and then having a sequence of like the plaid shirt and the lingerie gets entwined, like the male-female embracing, but it's clothes on a clothesline kind of thing.
Right.
But I've never drawn that. I've always had that idea. Things like that, I'll have ideas that go with me through life, and every now and then that idea will come back, and I might work on it. It might happen sometime, but quite often it doesn't,
Yeah. Would you consider yourself creative, or are you just kind of duplicating what you've learned? Are you more of a structured artist, or are you more of an abstract creative kind of guy?
I'm more of I'm half and half. I've done these tests on left brain, right brain, and I'm equal both sides.
You're pretty balanced then.
I'm pretty balanced, but as far as the art goes, I'm fairly creative, but mostly structured, I would say.
The reason I asked you that is because, Phillip got everything. I thought, I've read some of Phillip's writing, and I've told him in the past, look, Phillip, you're the artist. You can't be, but you write better than I do. You can't be everything. You can't be best at all of it. Leave some room for the rest of us brothers to, have some talent too. But Phillip does pretty much everything well. I had somebody I've written a lot of stories, and I had somebody asked me one time a few years ago, they said, Lloyd, you sure do have quite an imagination. And I had to marvel at that. I said, I actually have no imagination. Everything I write is something that I've seen. So it's something that I've seen or experienced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the stuff I'm writing about actually happened. Now, you might want to question our sanity, growing up and some of the things that we did, but it's all true. I imagine very little. So I asked you that question about the art in order to try and understand.
Well, they tell writers, I think I've seen this on any number of shows and in literature, that people want to learn how to write, and the instruction is write what you're familiar with. Write about what you're familiar with. Write what you know. So that part of it doesn't really apply as much to art because I don't do art from my old home in Nokomis. I don't go back and do the piney woods and the cotton fields and the dirt roads. I went on to do just people, mostly. So it has its application more in writing, I think, writing stories. So I don't know.
Well, I'm a little dubious to move on with recently my cousin in Georgia who mentioned that Philip was one of the most interesting guys that he knew. He brought Philip went out there to visit, and Travis was telling me about this story. He said he took Philip out to dinner, and he had to call all of his children over to meet Philip because they just listened to some of the stuff that Philip was casually telling. They just marveled. Who is this guy, Philip? What a character.
Yeah.
Is he lying? Is he making this stuff up? Travis said, no, that's the life that Philip has lived.
We were sitting there talking, and I was just talking about something. I remember what it was, but one of the granddaughters, they're in their 20s, I guess. One of the granddaughters would look over at Travis and say, Grandpa, is that true? And Travis is just laughing. Yeah, you can't make that up.
Well, Philip, he, if I might just add this, I don't think he's ashamed of it. Philip is like a lot of us. He's not been 100% in his relationships intact. You've been married, what, 2 or 3 times? 3 times.
Lloyd.
Maybe one time, couple
4
of times.
4
times. All right.
Well, but one of them only married
You
married the same one twice.
Well, that happens, yeah. So anyway, Philip is in a way a little bit unlucky in love. Now he did go over to the Philippines and find him a wife. That was your last.
That's
one.
the most recent wife.
The most recent wife, yeah. And brought her over here, and that hasn't quite worked out exactly. So I think some of that, as Travis's grandchildren were listening to Philip, some of the stuff that Philip has done, like going to the Philippines and getting him a wife. You couldn't find one locally?
I didn't really want to. I was looking at Avis's success with his Filipino wife. He's had
so Avis
20 years.
He's had a good success, yeah.
So I kind of wanted to go that route too. I just was unlucky. I got the wrong one,
Well, that could happen either way. Yeah, but that's still a long way to go to get a wife.
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to go to the Philippines anyway. Just to
you
visit.
want to go there anyway? Yeah.
Yeah, I like to travel. So that's like my motorcycling. I'm also a motorcyclist.
Well, yeah, that doesn't kind of mix with your artiste
persona.
Persona.
Well,
But there you are. You got the beard, and you can pass as a biker, a bum, or an artist. Either way, huh?
Yeah. I just love riding in the wind. I guess it goes back to my first paper route motorcycle.
You've continued to ride.
I fell in love with that feeling of the freedom of riding in the wind. It's kind of like flying or something.
Yeah.
So I've always loved motorcycling.
Well, what about at your age now? You're what, 79?
72.
72. Okay.
But I still do as much of it as I want to, as I can.
Are your reflexes slowed down?
Oh, definitely, yeah. So I have to be very careful.
You have to compensate and go a little slower, maybe.
I just can't take the chances I would take in the past.
Uh-huh. What's your favorite bike?
BMW. I've had 2 BMWs since 2003. And then first, I got back into riding after being off a bike for about 15 years. And then in 2003, I got a BMW 1150R.
Mm-hmm.
Put about 90,000 miles on that one. And then I got this 800cc upright twin, chain driven. And I put about 70,000 on it so far. Mm-hmm. But BMWs to me have always embodied quality and precision, German engineering, and reliability, And so the type of riding I do cross country by myself, I find myself in the middle of New Mexico or Nevada out on these roads, and I'm glad I've got something that's not risky, proposition. It
You
might
want a
break
good
down.
bike in
Yeah.
those circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, nowadays all bikes are pretty good. Hondas, Harleys, they're all excellent now.
But you aren't into speed riding and racing and that sort of thing.
No, not at all.
You're just more into exploring, aren't you?
Exploring, just traveling, just riding the road. It's like
What's that little game you've played for years where you go find something hidden, or what is that called?
letterboxing.
Litter boxing. Yeah.
That was another hobby. It's very enjoyable, but that had nothing to do with motorcycles.
Oh, that didn't have anything to do with motorcycles?
No.
Oh, okay. But you were on your motorcycle. You go to these locations and you find something.
Sometimes I would go on the motorcycle. Yeah.
Oh, I see. But it's not a motorcycle.
No.
Unique. Okay.
But yeah, the motorcycle has become part of my modus operandi.
And
my
you go,
persona.
you ride with groups of other old guys like yourself.
Yeah, usually.
You guys still go out together and camp out and all that.
Right. We're getting to the age we don't like camping as much, but we rent a cottage or a motel or something,
Just the camaraderie.
Yeah.
Is it-
The friendship and the camaraderie. It's like when you were younger riding horses, you didn't go look for people that didn't know anything about horses to ride the horses with.
looked
You
for
rode
other
with
guys
people
that had
who
a
loved
horse.
horses. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't any fun the other way.
But yeah, we all have a certain sensibility, there's a certain feeling, and you see a lot of pilots and doctors and
Kind
A
of
lot of-
gravitate toward one another.
toward motorcycling.
Oh, toward motorcycle. So
Yeah.
you get people from all walks, all
Yeah.
levels of social structure.
The thing is, when we're out there sitting by the campfire at a motorcycle campground, nobody talks about their job. We
Really?
don't- You don't know what they do until you're talking to them in private or something, and they say, oh, I'm a heart surgeon." What? We've been sitting out there,
Right.
Well,
Well, that's got to be interesting just in itself, some of the people that are out there riding bikes.
Yeah, it is. It becomes a very interesting thing to sit around and relax with just all different kind of people. No agenda.
You don't have to put on any airs at all.
Right. The only thing we have in common is that motorcycle, riding two wheels.
Right. Well, I years ago, I had a motorcycle for 2 or 3 years, and I had an opportunity. I've not ridden as much as you have, of course, but had an opportunity to kind of get a feel for what you're talking about as far as the wind in your hair. And, one thing I noticed about riding a motorcycle is your sensibilities to what's going on around you. When you're driving in the car with the windows up and the air conditioner on, you don't get the smells. On a motorcycle, you smell everything from the road tar to if you pass a factory or something, just those myriad of smells.
Yeah,
and the things you see on a motorcycle are not as tunnel vision as.
Yeah, it's a sensory extravaganza, riding a motorcycle. You see better. You smell the things around you. You even, those bugs that hit you in the mouth, you taste them too.
Well, Phillip, we got to have. I think we're about reached the end of the line here. I think we're right at our 58-minute period.
All right,
that
was
we
it
have
interesting
allocated
enough?
to us? I think it's very interesting, Phillip. We didn't really finish. Maybe we could have another one at some later time.
Yeah.
But this is just a fragment. I must say that my brother Phillip is indeed. I agree with Travis. He is one of the most interesting characters that I know. Probably, especially because he doesn't think that. It's kind of interesting. Everybody I have come in here and sit down to this microphone, the first thing they declare is that I'm not very interesting. So anyway, thanks, Phillip, for doing the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
And we'll put it out there, and hopefully somebody will enjoy meeting Brother Phillip and enjoy the stories that you've had to tell.
Look me up on the internet, PhilAlbrittonGraphics.com.
PhilAlbrittonGraphics.com. Look him up. Look at some of his art. You got your art out there?
Yeah.
Okay, you can see some of the stuff he does. You'll be amazed. This is Lloyd Albritton, Lloyd and Friends, and thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Lloyd and Friends Show with Lloyd Albritton.